A 19-year-old priest walks Turin's prison yards in 1841. He sees boys, 12 years old, 15, 17. Healthy bodies, sharp minds, all locked behind bars. These aren't hardened criminals. These are street children who stole bread, apprentices who fought back against masters, orphans with nowhere to go. The priest's name is Giovanni Melchiorre Bosco, Don Bosco. And on that prison visit, he doesn't just see cages. He sees something worse. He sees souls slipping through invisible traps nobody else notices. He sees the future of what happens when young people have no guidance, no protection, no one watching their backs. And then he starts having dreams, not normal dreams, prophetic visions that show him exactly what's destroying these boys from the inside. Visions of snakes and traps and poisoned meat that boys eat willingly even as it kills them. Visions that tell him the state of each boy's soul before that boy even knows it himself. The number's climbing every year since 2012. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. St. John Bosco saw this coming. Not smartphones, not TikTok, not Instagram. But he saw the mechanism. He saw the invisible traps. He saw young souls eating poison and calling it delicious. He saw the snake. And in 1868, he tried to warn everyone what happens when you let youth fall into patterns that feel good but destroy them. Slowly. The question isn't whether Don Bosco was right. The question is whether we're finally ready to listen. Because every single thing he saw in those visions is happening right now, just with different tools, different traps, same destruction. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the World Health Organization's Health Behavior in School-Age Children Study, published September 25th, 2024, surveying almost 280,000 young people across 44 countries showing 11% problematic social media use, and from peer-reviewed studies in social cognitive and affective neuroscience volume 19-2024 by Flannery and colleagues at the University of North Carolina, documenting developmental brain changes linked to addiction like social media behaviors. These aren't generic wellness blogs. These are hard neuroscience and global epidemiological data. Now back to the information. Masons, plasterers, they sleep in ditches, work 18-hour days, get paid nothing. By 1848, Turin has 30,000 illiterate young people. That's 40% of the city's youth population. No education, no family, no future. Crime becomes survival. The prisons overflow. Don Bosco visits these prisons with Father Joseph Cafasso, and the conviction hits him like a hammer. These boys aren't bad. They just need someone to care before they fall. He starts gathering them, Sundays, different locations, a church, a cemetery chapel, an empty lot, hears confessions, says mass, gives religious instruction, then takes them to the countryside for games. By 1846, he's got 400 boys showing up every Sunday. He calls it the Oratory, a place of prayer, but really it's a rescue mission. He buys a dilapidated shed in Valdocco, digs it deeper, converts it to a chapel. 500 boys squeeze in for Mass every Sunday. His mother Margaret moves in, gives up everything. They start housing orphans, 3 rented rooms, then more. By 1856, he's housing 150 boys, with 500 more in oratories with 10 priests. The number explodes to 700, then 800 over the next 13 years. He doesn't just feed these boys, he watches their souls, and God gives him a supernatural gift, dreams that reveal hidden spiritual realities. On February 1st, 1865, he announces one of the boys will die soon. He saw it in a dream the night before, March 16th, 1865. Anthony Ferraris dies after receiving last sacraments. John Bosco witnesses it, gives testimony under oath. Says Don Bosco predicted every single boy's death for 7 straight years, never missed. Every boy who died at the oratory, Don Bosco knew beforehand through dreams. And Bosco adds something chilling. He says they believed whoever died under Don Bosco's care went straight to heaven, because Don Bosco could see the state of their souls and would fight for them. Feast of St. Joseph. Don Bosco tells the boys about a new vision. He's walking a road with them, beautiful flowers, roses on both sides. Then boys start falling, one after another, dragged by invisible force toward a cliff that drops into fire. He asks his guide what makes them fall. The guide shows him traps everywhere, fine as spider webs, barely visible, some at ground level, others at eye level. Boys don't see them coming. They walk right into the snares, trip, fall, get dragged down. Don Bosco examines the traps closer. Each one has an inscription: pride, disobedience, envy, 6th commandment, theft, gluttony, sloth, anger, and 3 are linked together doing the most damage: impurity, disobedience, pride. Those 3 catch more boys than all the others combined. He asks why boys run so fast into the traps. The guide says human respect. The fear of what others think. that speeds them straight into destruction. Then Don Bosco notices something else. Knives scattered among the traps, tools for cutting free, big knives labeled meditation, smaller ones labeled spiritual reading, swords labeled devotion to the Blessed Sacrament and devotion to the Blessed Virgin, a hammer labeled confession. These are the escape tools, but most boys never use them. That vision from 1868. Look at what it describes. Invisible traps that feel harmless but destroy you. Interconnected sins, pride, impurity, disobedience working together, human respect driving compulsive behavior, the fear of missing out, the need for approval, tools for escape that nobody uses. Now think about social media. Think about dopamine-driven feedback loops. Think about 13-year-olds checking phones 96 times per day. Think about variable reward systems designed exactly like slot machines. Think about teens posting for likes, comments, validation from strangers. Think about comparison culture. Think about the fact that 46% of adolescents aged 13 to 17 say social media makes them feel worse about their body image, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Advisory on Youth Mental Health, updated February 19th, 2025. Think about how 78% of Generation Z checks devices every hour. Think about notification systems creating phantom vibrations experienced by over 70% of smartphone users. Don Bosco saw the traps. Different century, different technology, same spiritual mechanism, same destruction. The visions continue. Another dream. Don Bosco sees a huge, ugly snake, over 20 feet long. A stranger hands him a rope, tells him to dangle it over the snake. Don Bosco hesitates, scared. Finally does it. The snake leaps up and snares itself like a noose. Thrashes. Tears itself to pieces, destroying itself in its own fury. The stranger takes the rope, puts it in a box, opens the box. The rope has transformed into the words, Ave Maria, Hail Mary. The stranger explains, the snake is the devil, the rope is the rosary. With it you can strike, conquer, and destroy all of hell's demons. Then comes part 2 of the dream. The boys gather around the snake's torn flesh. Don Bosco shouts warnings. It's poisonous, don't touch it. The boys pick up pieces of the snake meat and eat it. They say it's delicious. Immediately they collapse. Bodies swell, harden like stone. Don Bosco tries to stop them. They keep eating. He asks the stranger why. The stranger says because the sensual man does not perceive the things that are of God. Don Bosco begs for a way to save them. The stranger says anvil and hammer. Don Bosco places the boys on an anvil, strikes them with a hammer. Most come back to life. The stranger explains, the anvil is Holy Communion. The hammer is confession. By confession, you strike away sin. By communion, you're sustained. Read that dream again. Boys eating poison knowingly, calling it delicious, collapsing immediately. The sensual man does not perceive the things of God. The body craves what kills it. Now look at modern research, published in Curis Journal Volume 12/2020, examining social media's connection to mental health, showing decreased activity in brain regions responsible for self-control in individuals with Facebook addiction. Published in Frontiers in Psychiatry. September 8th, 2025, examining Palestinian high school students, showing 78% of people aged 10 and up globally own mobile phones. Published in Studies in Media and Communication, Volume 13, Number 4, 2025, examining problematic short-form video use, showing preference for immediate reward promotes addictive online behavior. Published in the Journal of Surgical Medicine, Volume 9, Issue 10/2025, showing extended social media exposure alters dopamine regulation, reinforcing addictive tendencies similar to substance dependence. The mechanism is identical. Teenagers consume content that feels good in the moment, get dopamine hits, brain reward pathways light up. They keep consuming even when it causes depression, anxiety, sleep deprivation. They know it's hurting them. Surveys show 53% of Generation Z self-report feelings of loneliness linked to social media in 2023. 48% of teens in fall 2024 Pew Research survey say social media has mostly negative effect on people their age. They know, but they can't stop. They're eating the snake meat, calling it delicious, and nobody's putting them on the anvil. Don Bosco sees another vision. Boys running down a road, getting caught in traps, pulled straight into hell. But God leaves implements next to the traps. Cutting tools. 2 swords. One for devotion to the Blessed Sacrament through frequent Holy Communion. One for devotion to the Blessed Virgin. A hammer for confession. Knives for devotion to St. Joseph and various saints. The tools are right there, but boys don't use them. They run past. Get trapped. Dragged down. Don Bosco sees boys fighting with 2-pronged pitchforks against ferocious animals. The 2 prongs symbolize a good confession and a good communion. That's the weapon. That's what beats the monsters. But without those weapons, the monsters win. Every time. Don Bosco constantly repeats this message to his boys. Frequent and sincere confession. Frequent and devout communion. That's the system. That's the preventive method. Not punishment, not fear, but building armor before the attack comes. 40% of depressed and suicidal youth report problematic social media use defined as upset or discontent when not using social media. These youth show higher depressive symptoms, higher anxiety, more suicidal thoughts, poorer overall well-being. Lead researcher Dr. Betsy Kennard, distinguished teaching professor of psychiatry, says the characteristics of problematic use mirror addiction. Continued use even when wanting to stop. Cravings, interference with daily tasks, deceptive use, interpersonal disruptions. Dr. Kennard's team is developing interventional tools, family social media plans, where members discuss usage limits and agree to guidelines. But here's the problem. These are the same tools Don Bosco identified, the knives next to the traps. And just like in the vision, families aren't using them. Kids know the tools exist, parents know. But the trap is already sprung. The dopamine loop is locked, and cutting free requires effort most won't make. Still operates in about 130 countries today with approximately 28,000 members. Don Bosco's preventive system spreads globally. His method is simple. Reason, religion, and loving kindness over punishment. Build the armor before the attack. Give young people structure, purpose, community, spiritual weapons before the world destroys them. And it works. Thousands of boys rescued from lives of crime and despair. But here's what nobody expected. The traps would evolve. The snake would change form. By 2012, something shifts globally. The Program for International Student Assessment Survey covers over 1 million adolescents aged 15 and 16 across 37 countries from 2000 to 2018. School loneliness increases in 36 out of 37 countries after 2012. Worldwide, nearly twice as many adolescents in 2018 versus 2012 have elevated loneliness levels. The increase is larger among girls than boys. Multi-level modeling shows school loneliness is high when smartphone access and internet use are high. The study published in Journal of Adolescence, July 20th, 2021, documents this precisely. 2012 is the inflection point. That's when smartphones become ubiquitous. That's when social media goes from optional to mandatory for teenage social life. That's when the traps Don Bosco saw in 1868 become invisible digital snares catching millions. Europe, Central Asia, and Canada shows problematic social media use jumped from 7% in 2018 to 11% in 2022. That's a 57% increase in 4 years. 11% of adolescents now show signs of problematic social media behavior, struggling to control use and experiencing negative consequences. Girls report higher levels than boys, 13% versus 9%. Over 1/3 of young people report constant contact with friends online, highest rates among older adolescents. The report explicitly states problematic social media use has been shown to lead to depression, bullying, anxiety, and poor academic performance. Dr. Hans-Henri Klug, WHO Regional Director for Europe, says we need immediate and sustained action to help adolescents turn the tide. But the report also notes something crucial. Adolescents who are heavy but non-problematic users report stronger peer support and social connections. The tool itself isn't purely evil, it's the compulsive use, the addiction, the eating of the snake meat. That's what destroys. Teens aged 13 to 17 and their parents shows 55% of parents are extremely or very concerned about teen mental health today. Only 35% of teens say the same. But when teens are asked what they think causes mental health problems, 22% cite social media as the main factor. One teen boy says the overuse of social media in our society seems to be the main cause of depression among those in my age group. People seem to let themselves be affected by the opinions of people they don't know, and it wreaks havoc upon people's states of mind. One teen girl says the people they see on social media makes them think they have to look and be like them, or they won't be liked. The teens know. They're articulating it clearly, but knowing doesn't equal stopping. The share of teens who say social media makes them feel like they have people who can support them through tough times declined to 52% in 2024 from 67% in 2022. They're getting less benefit and more harm. 34% of teen girls say social media makes them feel worse about their own lives compared to 20% of boys, but they keep using it, hours per day, because the trap is sprung. They find immediate availability of rewards drives compulsive checking behaviors. Social media unpredictably provides rewards. People seek instant gratification because sometimes they get it. This creates a cycle of compulsive behaviors. The The study using neuroimaging shows individuals with Facebook addiction demonstrate decreased activity in brain regions responsible for self-control. The more frequently they check, the less control they have. Published research from University of North Dakota, examining dopamine, instant gratification, habit formation, and social validation, shows these pieces are designed to keep users engaged. Terrell and colleagues in Psychological Reports, Volume 115, 2014, examining neural systems subserving Facebook addiction, find those little notifications trigger dopamine rush and play a big role in addiction. When participants had higher addiction scores, there was more activity in brain's reward system area. Their brains reacted strongly to Facebook cues. Symptoms of addiction come from strong connections in brains related to Facebook, emphasizing how dopamine influences addictive behavior. The release of dopamine creates a cycle of wanting and reward that drives users to continue to platform in repetitive, addictive way. Studies in Media and Communication, Volume 13, Issue 4, 2025, examining problematic short-form video use among university students in media and communication programs, finds young people spend an average of 4.8 to 5.8 hours per day on social media. Children spend average up to 2 hours per day on TikTok, according to Custodio 2024 data. Total daily screen time of Generation Z reaches 9 hours according to Duarte 2025. The incidence of depression, anxiety, chronic stress is increasing among young users. The study documents association between screen time and symptoms of mental health problems. Variable reward systems incorporated into social media platforms increase engagement, particularly among teenagers. This system functions similarly to gaming device, establishing dopamine-driven feedback loop whenever users are uncertain if they will be given likes, shares, or comments. This cycle of incentives increases probability users would continue online activities despite potential adverse consequences by encouraging obsessive checking and habitual interaction. Teenagers who utilize social media show intense desire to keep using, since they're uncertain if they'll be approved or recognized. The reward pathways in brain can be triggered by expectation of achieving social approval. Over time, increased participation generates lucrative loop. The trap closes, just like Don Bosco saw. The boys can't perceive what's happening spiritually because the sensual body keeps demanding more. The health consequences stack up exactly like Don Bosco warned about spiritual death. Published systematic review in International Journal of Adolescence and Youth Volume 25, issue 1/2020 by Kellis and colleagues, finds use of social networking sites associated with increased risk of depression, anxiety, and psychological distress in adolescents, U.S. Surgeon General Advisory states children and adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of mental health problems, including symptoms of depression and anxiety. Recent survey shows teenagers spend an average of 3.5 hours daily on social media. That means most American teens are in the danger zone. 46% of adolescents aged 13 to 17 say social media makes them feel worse about their body image. National trends showed 12-month prevalence of major depressive episodes among adolescents increased from 8.7% in 2005 to 11.3% in 2014, according to Mojtabai and colleagues in Pediatrics 2016. New media screen activity suggested as one cause of increase in adolescent depression and suicide, according to Twenge in 2017. January 24th, 2024. New York City designates social media a public health hazard. The city sues major social media companies for negligence and public nuisance. This isn't fringe science. This is mainstream public health, recognizing what Don Bosco saw in vision form. The loneliness epidemic hits precisely as Don Bosco predicted. Souls would be isolated even in crowds. WHO data shows around 16% of people worldwide experience loneliness. That's 1 in 6. But among adolescents aged 13 to 17, 21% report pervasive loneliness. Among young adults aged 19 to 29, 27% experience significant loneliness. These are the highest rates of any age group. Older adults aged 65 plus show only 17%. Loneliness is an adolescent crisis. 73% of 16 to 24-year-olds say they struggle with it, according to data compiled from multiple sources. And it's been climbing every year between 1976 and 2019. Not caused by pandemic, preceded it, made worse by it. But the trend started with smartphones. Young people aged 15 to 24 experienced 70% reduction in social interaction over past 2 decades, according to U.S. Surgeon General Advisory. 70%. That's catastrophic. American Psychiatric Association poll from January 2024 shows 30% of Americans aged 18 to 34 report feeling lonely every day or several times a week. 43% of young adults state feeling unloved. This reflects significant emotional distress. Single adults nearly twice as likely as married adults to say they've been lonely on a weekly basis, 39% versus 22%. The structure that used to protect young people, family, community, church has collapsed. And social media pretends to fill the gap but actually widens it. Here's where Don Bosco's vision becomes prophecy. He saw the solution, not punishment, not taking away the trap, but giving young people weapons before they encounter it, building spiritual armor, community, purpose, confession, communion, devotion, structure. And modern research confirms this works. The problem is almost nobody's doing it. Families aren't implementing guidelines. Churches aren't teaching digital discipleship. Schools aren't addressing addiction mechanisms. We're watching millions of young people eat poisoned snake meat, collapse, and we're just tracking the data. Don Bosco didn't track data. He put boys on the anvil. He struck them with the hammer. He forced intervention. He built oratories. He gave them trades. He taught them prayer. He created community. He prevented the fall before it happened. And when it happened anyway, he fought for their souls individually. Don't understand the platforms. Don't see the danger. Teens are exploited by algorithms designed to maximize engagement regardless of harm. The algorithm doesn't care about well-being. It cares about time on site. Just like factory owners didn't care about child laborers. They cared about production. The mechanism of exploitation is identical, just updated. Don Bosco saw boys in prison cells. Today's teens are in digital prisons, trapped by dopamine loops, trapped by fear of missing out, trapped by comparison culture, trapped by need for validation from strangers. The bars are invisible, but the cage is real, and the damage is measurable. Suicide rates, depression rates, anxiety rates, all climbing in lockstep with smartphone adoption. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script draws from peer-reviewed studies in Journal of Affective Disorders, 2025, JAMA Network Open, November 3rd, 2025, Examining Social Media Detox Interventions, PMC articles on neurotransmitter changes in youth with internet and smartphone addiction, and WHO Commission on Social Connection flagship report released. 2024, examining 1.049 million adolescents worldwide. These aren't blog posts. These are hard science publications with statistical significance and clinical implications. Now back to the information. We know 40% of depressed, suicidal youth show problematic social media use. We know the mechanisms. We know dopamine pathways. We know variable reward systems. We know the solution. Limit screen time. Build face-to-face relationships. Create structure. Provide purpose. Teach spiritual disciplines. It's the same solution Don Bosco implemented. But we're not doing it. Why? Because unlike Don Bosco, we're not seeing souls. We're seeing metrics. We're seeing engagement rates. We're seeing market share. We're not seeing the 13-year-old girl who posts a selfie and gets 3 likes while her friend got 300 and now she's crying in her bedroom believing she's worthless. We're not seeing the 15-year-old boy who spends 6 hours watching other people live exciting lives while he sits alone believing he's missing everything. We're not seeing the 17-year-old who's been cyberbullied for weeks, reads every cruel comment, and considers suicide because the online mob has declared her existence invalid. Don Bosco saw them, every single one. That's why he could save them. It requires admitting what's wrong, naming the trap, asking for help, cutting free. Communion provides sustenance. It reminds you you're not alone. You're part of a body. You're fed by something greater than yourself. Social media does the opposite and rewards self-deception. You post the highlight reel, hide the struggles, pretend everything's perfect. You're trained to lie about your life. And instead of communion, genuine sharing of life together, you get likes. Empty validation from strangers who don't know you and don't care beyond the 2 seconds it takes to double tap. You're starving while thinking you're fed. You're isolated while thinking you're connected. The spiritual mechanism of deception is identical to what Don Bosco saw in the boys eating snake meat, calling it delicious while their bodies hardened into stone. The research on intervention strategies confirms Don Bosco's preventive system works when applied. Study in JAMA Network. Open November 3rd, 2025, evaluates outcomes of 1-week social media detox intervention on behavior and mental health symptoms. Results show even brief breaks improve well-being markers. But the key word is intervention. Someone has to enforce it. Someone has to care enough to take the phone away, to sit with the discomfort, to provide alternative activities, to rebuild face-to-face relationships. That's exactly what Don Bosco did. He didn't lecture boys about sin. He took them to the countryside, played games, taught them trades, built workshops, created alternatives before removing the destructive behavior. Modern interventions that work follow this model. Family social media plans where everyone agrees to limits. community programs that provide in-person activities, schools that teach digital literacy and addiction awareness, churches that create youth groups with genuine relationships. But these require effort, time, sacrifice. Most adults aren't willing to give it, so the teens stayed trapped. Girls were somewhat protected by family structures and social norms. Today, the gender flip is stark in certain metrics. 13% of adolescent girls show problematic social media use versus 9% of boys according to WHO data. 34% of teen girls say social media makes them feel worse about their own lives versus 20% of boys. Girls report higher levels of depression, anxiety, body image issues linked to social media. Why? Because the traps are specifically designed for female vulnerabilities. Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. These platforms emphasize appearance, popularity, curated perfection. They exploit female tendency towards social comparison, female desire for connection, female sensitivity to peer evaluation. The algorithm learns what triggers engagement in teen girls and serves it relentlessly. The trap is spring-loaded for them. Boys face different traps: gaming addiction, pornography, rage-bait political content. But the mechanism is the same. Find the vulnerability, exploit it, keep them engaged. Each trap designed for specific weaknesses, each snare carefully placed at the level where that particular boy would walk into it. Ground-level traps for some, eye-level for others, all barely visible, all deadly. The modern digital landscape is the same: micro-targeted content. Algorithms serving you exactly what your weakness craves. Porn for the lustful, luxury content for the envious, rage bait for the angry. Validation seeking for the insecure. Food content for the gluttonous. The trap knows you, studies your behavior, learns your patterns, then feeds you poison designed specifically for your soul. Don Bosco saw this spiritually in 1868. We're living it technologically in 2024, and the casualties are piling up in both cases. The most chilling part of Don Bosco's vision is the boys running faster because of human respect, fear of what others think, that accelerates them straight into the traps. Look at modern teen behavior. Fear of missing out drives constant checking. Fear of being left out drives hours of scrolling. Fear of being unpopular drives posting, despite knowing it makes you feel worse. One researcher calls it phubbing. Being physically present with someone but ignoring them to use your phone. This destroys relationship quality. But teens can't stop, because if they're not online, they'll miss something. Someone will make plans without them. Some drama will happen and they won't know. They'll be excluded, forgotten, irrelevant. This fear drives them deeper into the trap, makes them check 96 times per day, makes them respond immediately to every notification, makes them sacrifice sleep, homework, face-to-face relationships for the illusion of connection. Don Bosco saw this, called it human respect, identified it as one of the main accelerants into spiritual death. Devotions to saints, modern equivalent, digital detox, screen time limits, face-to-face relationships, physical activity, creative hobbies, sleep hygiene, therapy, community involvement, real worship, not online worship. The tools exist. Research proves they work. 1 week, social media detox shows measurable improvement. Family agreements reduce problematic use. Community programs build resilience, but these require intentionality, discipline. Adult involvement. And that's where the system breaks. Parents are on phones too. Teachers are overwhelmed. Churches are empty. Communities are fractured. So the tools sit unused next to the traps. And the teens keep falling, keep getting dragged toward the cliff, keep eating the poisoned meat, because nobody's forcing them to pick up the knife and cut free. He dies 1888 after building a worldwide network of rescue. 250 homes, 130,000 children saved, 6,000 boys became priests spreading the mission. The Salesian system works. Then, over the next century, technology advances. Radio, television, telephone, movies. Each one changes how people connect, but none of them trap souls the way social media does. Why? Because none of them had the algorithm. None of them had the dopamine hack. None of them studied your brain and served you exactly what your weakness craved in variable reward schedule designed to maximize addiction. That technology doesn't exist until 2012. Instagram launches October 6th, 2010. Facebook goes mobile. Twitter becomes ubiquitous. Snapchat launches September 2011. By 2012, the smartphone is standard. By 2015, social media is mandatory for teenage social life, and the data shows exactly what happens. Loneliness doubles, depression spikes, anxiety climbs, suicide rates increase, all after 2012, all in lockstep with smartphone adoption. The trap Don Bosco saw in 1868 goes from spiritual vision to technological reality, and the casualties exceed anything Don Bosco witnessed in Turin's prisons. Here's what nobody wants to hear. Don Bosco's solution requires adults to actually parent, to actually care, to actually sacrifice for young people. He gave his entire life, worked crushing hours, reduced sleep to almost nothing. His friends begged him to rest. He said, "In heaven, not on earth. When the devil rests in his work of ruining souls, then I'll rest from fighting for them." He never wavered, survived multiple assassination attempts. Clergy accused him of stealing parishioners. Politicians called him dangerous. He kept going, because he saw the souls. Today's adults aren't willing to fight like that. Parents give kids phones at age 10 to make their own lives easier. Teachers can't control classrooms, so they allow devices. Churches don't want to seem judgmental, so they stay silent about digital addiction. Therapists treat symptoms with medication instead of addressing root causes. We're all complicit. We're watching the snake devour the children, and we're taking notes, publishing papers, holding conferences, while the body count rises. He's horrified. Says I must, by any available means, prevent boys ending up here. He doesn't study the problem. He acts. Today we walk into the digital prison, see teens aged 12 to 18, healthy bodies, intelligent minds, lacking genuine connection and spiritual foundation, spending 7 to 9 hours daily in algorithmic cages designed to maximize their exploitation. We're horrified. We publish studies, we hold awareness campaigns, we create advisory boards, we track metrics, but we don't act. We don't build oratories. We don't create alternatives. We don't force intervention. We watch, because acting would require sacrifice, would require adults to give up their own phone addictions, would require rebuilding communities, would require churches to actually make demands on people, would require schools to enforce boundaries, would require parents to be unpopular. Nobody wants to do it, so the teens stay trapped. 19 young people with internet and smartphone addiction compared to 19 matched healthy controls. 12 underwent 9 weeks cognitive behavioral therapy. Results show brain parenchymal and gray matter volume adjusted GABA to creatine ratios higher in subjects with addiction. The GABA and glutamate levels correlated with clinical scales of internet and smartphone addiction, impulsiveness, depression, anxiety, insomnia, and sleep. Quality. After cognitive behavioral therapy, improvement seen. But here's the key. 9 weeks of intensive therapy. That's what it takes to see brain changes. Not awareness, not a conversation, not a wellness app. Intensive behavioral intervention. That's the anvil and hammer. That's putting the boy on the anvil and striking with force. It works, but it requires resources, commitment, expertise. Most teens don't have access. Most families can't afford it. Most insurance won't cover it. So the brain changes become permanent. The addiction solidifies. The teen spends the rest of life trapped unless something breaks the pattern. Gave them purpose before the world broke them. That's the preventive system. Today we do the opposite. We give kids smartphones at age 10 with no training, no boundaries, no supervision. We let them onto platforms designed by psychologists and neuroscientists specifically to exploit adolescent brain development. We watch them get addicted. Then when they're depressed, anxious, suicidal at age 15, we act surprised. We send them to therapy. Put them on medication, treat the symptoms. But the trap is still sprung. The phone is still in their hand. The algorithm is still serving poison. And we wonder why therapy doesn't work, why medication doesn't work. Because we're treating the symptom while leaving the cause untouched. Don Bosco would never do that. He'd take away the trap, build the alternative, then gradually teach them to navigate the danger with weapons in hand. The spiritual dimension can't be ignored. Don Bosco's visions weren't just psychological insight. They were supernatural revelation, showing him the state of souls. He saw boys attacked by the devil, saw demons in the form of animals and snakes, saw spiritual traps set by forces of hell. Modern secular research tries to explain everything through neuroscience and sociology. But what if Don Bosco was right? What if there's a spiritual component? What if the algorithm isn't just code? What if it's a tool for something older? The mechanism is too perfect. Variable reward schedules that match slot machines, dopamine manipulation that mirrors cocaine, social engineering that destroys relationships while promising connection, content curation that feeds every vice while starving every virtue, design patterns that target specific psychological vulnerabilities with precision. That's not accident. That's not just capitalism. That's exploitation with intent. Don Bosco would recognize it immediately. The snake has updated its appearance, but it's the same snake, same goal. Destroy souls, separate them from God, make them crave poison, make them call it delicious as they die. He saw invisible traps, barely visible as spider webs. That's exactly what code is. Invisible, barely detectable, everywhere. He saw boys dragged by unseen force. That's the algorithm, unseen, automated, relentless. He saw poisoned meat that looks delicious. Well, that's the content, perfectly curated, professionally produced, scientifically optimized to trigger craving. He saw boys unable to stop eating even as they died. That's addiction. Compulsive use, despite negative consequences. He saw the tools for escape ignored. That's digital detox apps that sit unused, screen time limits that get disabled, family plans that get abandoned, therapy recommendations that don't get followed. Every single element of the vision has a precise modern equivalent. Either Don Bosco had supernatural insight into the future, or spiritual realities don't change. The tools evolve, the traps update. But the mechanism of destroying young souls stays identical across centuries. Use, 100 million. Not using. Addicted, experiencing negative consequences, unable to control use. And the rate is increasing, 7% in 2018, 11% in 2022. That's 57% increase in 4 years. If that rate continues, we hit 17% by 2026. That's nearly 1 in 5 adolescents globally. At that point, you're not dealing with an outlier problem. You're dealing with societal collapse. Because these aren't just sad kids. These are the future. The ones who will run businesses, raise children, lead nations. And they're being neurologically damaged during critical developmental windows. Prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until age 25. That's the region responsible for impulse control, decision-making, planning, emotional regulation. Exposing it to addictive dopamine manipulation during development hardwires the addiction patterns, creates permanent changes. Even if they quit later, the damage is done. The neural pathways are set. The behavioral patterns are ingrained. That's what Don Bosco saw when he said, "Whoever died under his care went to heaven." He saw what happened when the soul's formation period was either protected or corrupted. And he fought for protection with everything he had. Today, we can't scale that. We have billions of teens. But the principle remains, you save individuals, not demographics, not statistics. The teen girl whose Instagram feed makes her hate her body, that specific girl. The boy who spends 8 hours gaming because he has no friends, that specific boy. The 15-year-old being cyberbullied right now, contemplating suicide, that specific person. You can't save millions, but you can save one. Don Bosco proved that one multiplies. One saved boy becomes a priest, saves others, starts an oratory, impacts hundreds, thousands. The multiplication happens through individuals committed to other individuals. That's why the Salesians grew. That's why the system worked. Not because of programs, because of people willing to sacrifice for specific souls. The research published across 2024 and 2025 should be the wake-up call. WHO surveying 279,000 adolescents. University of Texas. Southwestern examining 489 depressed suicidal youth. Pew Research polling 1,391 teens and parents. University of North Carolina. Neuroscience study tracking brain development. These aren't small studies. These are massive data sets with statistical power. And they all say the same thing. Social media is damaging youth mental health. The mechanism is addiction. The consequences are depression, anxiety, loneliness, suicidal ideation. The solution is intervention, structure, boundaries, real-world relationships, spiritual formation. Everything Don Bosco identified in 1868. Everything he built his system to address. The research validates the prophecy. Now the question is whether anyone acts on it, whether parents will enforce boundaries, whether schools will limit devices, whether churches will teach digital discipleship, whether therapists will address root causes instead of medicating symptoms, whether anyone will build modern oratories, create spaces where teens can gather without phones, where face-to-face relationships form, where real community exists, where purpose gets taught, where souls get protected before they fall into the traps. No fear, just reason, religion, loving kindness. Create environments where boys wanted to do good because they understood why good mattered. Give them skills so they could support themselves. Give them community so they weren't alone. Give them faith so they had purpose beyond survival. The system worked then. It would work now. But it requires adults willing to give what Don Bosco gave. Total commitment, constant presence, sacrificial love. Unwavering focus on the souls in front of you. Most people aren't willing. They want a program, an app, a system that doesn't require personal cost. That's why the traps keep working. That's why millions of teens sit alone in their rooms staring at screens feeling worthless. Because there's no Don Bosco in their life, no adult willing to fight for them. No one putting them on the anvil and striking with the hammer of truth and love and structure and community and purpose. His body rests in the Basilica of Our Lady Help of Christians in Turin, the same city where he started, the same neighborhood where he bought that dilapidated shed in 1846. The Valdocco Oratory still exists, still operates. You can visit it, see the original chapel, walk the grounds where Don Bosco gathered hundreds of boys every Sunday. The building stands as physical proof that one person can change everything. One priest with no money but infinite commitment saved thousands, built a worldwide network that still operates in 130 countries. And he did it by seeing what others couldn't see: the invisible traps, the poisoned meat, the snakes hiding in plain sight, and by refusing to walk away even when everyone told him his work was impossible. Not that nothing can be done, but that the traps are real, the poison is real, the danger is real, and the solution is also real. Don Bosco saw it, lived it, proved it works. The system is reason, religion, loving kindness. The weapons are confession, communion, devotion, community, purpose. The method is prevention, not punishment, building armor before the attack, giving tools before the crisis. Fighting for souls, one individual at a time with total commitment. That system worked in 1840s. Turin with street children. It works now with screen children. The technology changed, the traps updated, but young souls need the same things they always needed. Adults who care. Structure that protects, community that belongs, purpose that matters, faith that sustains. Don Bosco gave them those things. We can too. But only if we're willing to pay the price he paid. Give what he gave, fight like he fought, see what he saw, not metrics, not demographics, not problems, but souls. Individual, precious, irreplaceable souls being devoured by a snake that looks delicious until it kills you. Saw the poisoned meat they'd eat, saw the tools they'd ignore, and he spent 47 years building the solution. Now it's up to us whether we use it or watch another generation fall.